An elderly woman wins the lottery, but discovers her $4.7 million prize was stolen, and the world is in shock. Kathleen was 68 years old and had a simple routine. Every day, even before the sun came up, she would put on her old coat, grab her worn-out handbag, and walk to the corner newsstand. "Good morning, Walter. The usual, please," she said with a gentle smile. Walter, the owner of the stand, knew that request all too well. "Off you go again, Mrs. Kathleen, trying your luck, eh? Maybe today's your day." She would chuckle softly. It was her little superstition. She had been doing that for years, buying a lottery ticket every day, always hoping that one day she'd be the big winner. Kathleen wasn't a woman of luxuries. She lived modestly, relying on a tight pension and occasional help from her children. Even so, she never skipped buying her daily ticket. That little slip of paper was her pocket-sized dream. "And what if I win, Walter?" she'd say playfully. "I'll buy a house by the seaside and spend the rest of my days just listening to the sound of the waves," Joachim would laugh. "And I'd like to see you come back and invite me for a coconut water at your new place." Kathleen smiled and, tucking the ticket into her handbag, made her way home. Even though she wasn't sure that dream would ever come true, just imagining it made her days feel lighter. It was just another ordinary afternoon, and Kathleen was sitting in the armchair in her living room, the news playing on the TV, though she wasn't paying much attention. Her cat Luna was dozing beside her, while the clock ticked lazily in the background. Then Kathleen remembered the lottery ticket. "Oh dear, I almost forgot," she whispered to herself, carefully getting up. She grabbed her handbag, which was hanging from a chair in the kitchen, pulled out the crumpled ticket and sat down again. Putting on her glasses, she began checking the numbers being announced on the TV. First, 7, then 23. "And now," she murmured, feeling her heart start to race. Each number she read seemed to match the ones on the ticket in her hand. When she checked the final number and realized they all matched, she put her hand over her mouth, stunned. "Oh my goodness, did I win?" "I won," she said, hardly believing it, as her eyes filled with tears. She stood up slowly, as if in a dream, and with trembling hands picked up the phone to call her eldest son. "Hello, Sheldon? You won't believe it. I've won. I've got the winning ticket," she said, trying not to cry. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Mum, what do you mean? Are you serious? How much did you win?" Kathleen took a deep breath, trying not to faint on the spot. $5 million. $5 million. "Mum, are you kidding me? I'm shaking here. Wait, I'm telling Anna," Sheldon shouted excitedly. Kathleen smiled, overwhelmed with emotion. "Just don't go telling everyone, okay, love? I need to figure out how this works first." After hanging up the phone, she stayed there, holding the ticket close, her heart brimming with joy. "Luna, my girl, we're rich," she said, laughing to herself, while the cat looked up at her, not understanding a thing. For the first time in her life, Kathleen was certain that her dreams could finally come true. The next day, Kathleen put on her best clothes and headed to the casino where the prize was supposed to be collected. It was a huge place, full of lights and people everywhere. Her heart was racing, but with joy. "This is it," she thought. When she reached the service desk, she handed over the ticket with a confident smile. "Good morning, love. I'm here to collect my prize," she said, carefully placing the ticket in the attendant's hand. The young man, dressed in a sharp suit and wearing a shiny badge, took the ticket without much enthusiasm and began entering the details into the system. Kathleen stood there, nervous, clutching her handbag tightly. "Just a moment, ma'am," he said, focused on the screen. Time seemed to stand still. He typed, clicked buttons, and frowned. What should have been a quick process was taking longer than Kathleen expected. Finally, the man looked at her with an uneasy expression. "Ma'am, there's some mistake. The system isn't recognizing this ticket as a winner." Kathleen blinked, confused. "What do you mean? The ticket is right here. The numbers are correct. I saw them on TV yesterday." The attendant tried to remain polite. "I understand, ma'am, but the system doesn't show it as a winning ticket. Maybe there was an error. Are you sure you bought it from the correct place?" Kathleen felt her stomach churn. Yes, of course, I've bought hundreds, maybe thousands of tickets. My son even checked it with me. She pushed the ticket back towards him, her voice filled with anguish. Check it again, please. There must be something wrong with the machine. He tried once more, but the result was the same. I'm really sorry, Ma'am, but this ticket isn't showing as a winner. It might be a good idea to contact the lottery headquarters to sort this out. Kathleen felt the ground disappear beneath her. It made no sense. How could everything have been perfect the day before, only for them to say now that the ticket was worthless? She looked around, feeling small amidst the bright lights and people going about their lives as if nothing had happened. This can't be right, she whispered, more to herself than to the attendant. The man gave her an awkward smile, hoping to end the conversation. I'm really sorry, Ma'am. It could just be a misunderstanding. Try visiting the lottery office and see what they say. With no other choice, Kathleen took back the ticket with trembling hands and placed it in her bag. She walked away in a daze, trying to understand what had happened. In her mind, that ticket was worth $5 million. How could they say otherwise? Something wasn't right, and she had the sinking feeling that things were about to get worse. That night, Kathleen arrived home exhausted, her mind spinning, and she kicked off her shoes at the door and collapsed into the armchair in the living room, still holding her bag, as if the ticket might disappear at any moment. Luna, her cat, jumped into her lap, but Kathleen barely noticed. Everything felt surreal. How could she have lost something that was hers? I'll sort this out tomorrow, she thought. It must just be a mistake. She turned on the TV, hoping to relax and figure out what to do next, but the moment the news began, she froze. And the big lottery winner has collected their prize, the news anchor announced with a bright smile. It's $5 million, and the lucky winner is Trevor Smith, a resident of the city. The screen switched to a live report, showing a man holding a giant check. He was waving and smiling at the camera, surrounded by reporters. A woman stood next to him, beaming with joy as she hugged him. Winning this prize is a miracle, Trevor told the reporters, smiling as if he had just conquered the world. It's like the numbers were chosen by God himself. Kathleen's eyes widened, her heart pounding. Unable to blink, she stared at the screen and saw something that made her breath catch. On the ticket Trevor was holding, the numbers were identical to the ones she had written down. No, this can't be, she murmured, a chill running down her spine. She pulled the crumpled ticket from her bag and checked the numbers again. One by one they matched perfectly with the ones on the TV. That's my ticket, she shouted, panicking. How does he have the same numbers? Luna jumped off her lap, startled by her outburst. Kathleen began to tremble, a wave of despair washing over her. It was as if everything around her had become distant, like she was watching a nightmare unfold from outside her own body. My God, this can't be happening. She tried calling her son, but her hands were shaking so badly that she nearly dropped the phone. When Sheldon answered, her voice cracked. Sheldon. Son, are you watching this? On the TV, that prize is mine. He's holding my numbers. Mom, calm down. It's what you mean, Sheldon asked, confused. The numbers are the same, Sheldon. I can see them. He's got the prize that should be mine. She began to cry, gripping the phone tightly. This isn't fair. Calm down, Mum. We'll figure this out. There must be an explanation. But Kathleen could only sob. The feeling of losing something so huge was overwhelming. She could barely breathe. Everything she had dreamed of for years had vanished in an instant into someone else's hands. I don't know what to do, son. I just don't know, she whispered, devastated. On the other end, Sheldon tried to comfort her, but Kathleen was drowning in sadness and anger. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Kathleen decided she couldn't let this go. Her heart was heavy, but her mind was clear. She had to find out what had happened. With the ticket in hand, she went to the police station. The waiting room was cold and the hard chairs made the minutes drag on. Finally, an officer called her name. Mrs. Kathleen, please come in. She was led to a small office with a desk cluttered with papers and a tired-looking man with sharp eyes. He was the detective in charge of special cases. Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you? He asked, adjusting his glasses. Kathleen placed the ticket on the desk and explained everything in detail. She described checking the numbers, going to the casino, and the shock of seeing someone else claim the prize on TV. "The prize is mine, sir. I have no doubt. I checked the ticket and the numbers are exactly the same. Something isn't right. This isn't fair." The detective listened attentively but sighed at the end, as if he had seen similar cases before. "Ma'am, I understand this is really frustrating, but we need very clear evidence to accuse a big company like the casino." Kathleen frowned. "What do you mean evidence? The ticket is right here, you can see it, and the numbers are correct. How can someone else win with the same numbers? This is fraud, plain and simple." The detective shook his head, trying to stay calm. "I know, Mrs. Kathleen, but according to the official system, it seems that his ticket is the registered one, not yours. The casino could say it was just a mistake, maybe a reading error or something." Kathleen was speechless for a moment, feeling as if the ground was crumbling beneath her again. "So you're saying there's nothing I can do? That they just steal from me and that's it?" The detective scratched the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "It's not that simple. You could hire a lawyer and try to sue them, but it won't be easy. Casinos have lots of money and strong lawyers. To prove fraud, we'd need solid evidence like internal files or suspicious transactions, and as you know, they're very good at covering things up." Kathleen felt her chest tighten. It was becoming clear that this fight would be tough. "So you're not going to do anything?" The detective looked down for a moment. "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Kathleen. I can file your complaint, but as things stand, the chances of success are slim." Kathleen clutched her bag to her chest, holding back tears. "They can't get away with this. They just can't," she whispered, more to herself than to the detective. He shook his head with a sympathetic look. "I really hope you find justice, ma'am, but you'll need a lot of patience and strength." Kathleen stood up slowly, the crumpled ticket in her hand. "Patience I have, sir. I've been through a lot in my life. All I want is what's rightfully mine, nothing more." She left the office carrying the weight of injustice on her shoulders. Despite the pain in her heart, she knew the story was far from over, and no matter how hard it would be, she wasn't going to let them take away the dream she had carried for so many years. After a few days, Kathleen received a call from the police station. Her heart skipped a beat, hoping there might be some good news. She answered quickly, pressing the phone to her ear. "Mrs. Kathleen, this is Detective Jeffrey. I have an update on your case." "Well, Mr. Jeffrey, have you found anything?" she asked, full of hope. The silence on the other end lasted longer than she would have liked. "Unfortunately, Mrs. Kathleen, we couldn't find any evidence to confirm the fraud. We checked the casino's system, and officially, the ticket registered as the winner belongs to Mr. Trevor Smith. We can't proceed with the investigation without more solid proof." Kathleen felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "And my ticket? Is it worthless now? How can they say I'm wrong if the numbers are the same?" "I understand your frustration, Mrs. Kathleen. Truly. But the lack of evidence makes it impossible to move forward. Without something concrete, the court won't open a formal case against the casino." Kathleen took a deep breath, trying to control her anger and sadness. "So that's it? It's over? They get my money, and there's nothing I can do?" On the other end of the line, the detective sighed. "I know it's unfair, but you have to understand that these cases are very hard to prove. You can seek legal advice if you want to take this further on your own. But from our side, unfortunately, we can't help anymore." Kathleen closed her eyes, feeling the tears welling up, but she didn't want to cry over the phone. "All right, Mr. Jeffrey. Thanks for trying," she said weakly, holding back the tears as best she could. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Kathleen. Best of luck to you." She hung up and stood still, the phone in her hand. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. She sat on the edge of the bed, hugging her handbag as if it could offer some comfort. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. All she wanted was what was rightfully hers, nothing more. "How can they steal from me so easily?" she murmured to herself as the tears finally rolled down her face. Luna, her cat, jumped into her lap and curled up, purring softly, as if to say that everything would be okay. But in that moment, Kathleen couldn't believe it. It felt like all the doors were shut, and the only thing left was the emptiness of a shattered dream. In the following days, Kathleen sank into sadness, but the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. So she decided to do what seemed like the next step, even if it felt impossible and expensive. She would hire a lawyer and fight for what was hers. She wouldn't let them treat her like a fool. "If they think they'll beat me, they're wrong," she muttered to herself as she wrote down the name of a law firm Sheldon had recommended. The next morning, she went to the law office. The space was modern and bustling, and Kathleen felt slightly out of place, but she held her ground. A receptionist greeted her with a friendly smile. "Good morning, madam. How can I help you? I'm here to speak to someone about a fraud case. I need justice," Kathleen said, adjusting her handbag on her lap. Soon she was taken to a room where a tall man with short hair and glasses was waiting. He introduced himself as Dr. Preston and listened attentively as Kathleen told her story, from the day she bought the ticket to the moment she saw the other man receiving the prize on TV. "And here's my ticket, sir. The numbers all match," she said, handing him the crumpled paper. "But they said it's worthless." Dr. Preston examined the ticket, made some notes and crossed his arms, thinking, "Mrs. Kathleen, from what you've told me, it does seem like something irregular happened, but going up against a casino won't be easy. They're big, have lots of money, experienced lawyers, and can be dangerous." Kathleen pressed her lips together but kept her gaze steady. "I know it'll be tough, but I won't give up. I've lived too long to accept injustice like this. If I have to go all the way, I will." The lawyer gave her a faint smile, impressed by her determination. "I like your spirit. We'll file a case against the casino. It might take some time and you'll need to be patient, but we'll try. We'll need to gather as much evidence and documentation as possible, and of course, there will be some costs involved." "How much will it cost, sir?" Kathleen asked, already fearing the answer. Dr. Preston paused before replying. "I won't lie, it won't be cheap. But if you trust us, we'll do everything we can. And if we win, the casino may have to cover our fees too." Kathleen took a deep breath. She didn't have much money left, but there was no turning back now. "I'll find a way, sir. I just need someone to believe in me. That's all I want." He smiled again, this time more confidently. "Then let's move forward, Mrs. Kathleen. Leave it to me." When she left the office, Kathleen felt, for the first time in days, a small glimmer of hope returning. Months passed, and Kathleen's life became an emotional roller coaster. Every meeting with the lawyer brought renewed hope, but the fear of losing never left her heart. Dr. Preston and his team worked tirelessly to build a strong case. They gathered documents, called witnesses, and challenged the casino's representatives with tough questions. It seemed like they were close to a breakthrough, but Kathleen knew she was facing a powerful opponent. The day of the final hearing arrived, and Kathleen sat in the front row with Sheldon beside her. He held her hand tightly, trying to reassure her, though his own nerves were clear. Across the room, the casino's lawyers seemed calm, men in suits who barely glanced her way, as if they were certain of victory. Dr. Preston stood to give his closing argument, defending Kathleen with all the right words. He explained how something as simple as a system error could conceal a fraud and how his client deserved justice. Kathleen listened with a tight chest, hoping that in the end the truth would prevail. When the judge began reading the verdict, the room fell silent. Kathleen held her breath, as if one wrong word could ruin everything. The judge spoke slowly, in a formal and measured tone. "After reviewing all the evidence presented, the court finds that there is insufficient proof to confirm any wrongdoing by the casino. Therefore, we rule in favor of the defendant." Kathleen felt her world crumble. Her hands grew cold, and she could barely hear the judge's words after that. It was as if all the voices around her had faded, leaving only the pain in her chest. "Mum," Sheldon whispered beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "It's going to be okay. We'll figure something out." But Kathleen couldn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the casino's lawyers who were shaking hands, clearly satisfied they had won. That was the harsh truth. All the effort, the struggle, the months of anguish and hope, it had all ended in defeat. Dr. Preston approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry. We did our best." Kathleen simply nodded, as if to say she understood, though inside she felt shattered. As they left the courthouse, the sunlight felt colder. Kathleen walked slowly with Sheldon at her side, as if carrying the weight of all the world's injustices on her shoulders. When they reached the pavement, she stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky. "I only wanted what was mine, nothing more," she murmured softly. Sheldon wrapped an arm around her shoulders, trying to comfort her. "Let's go home, Mum." Kathleen nodded slightly, and without another word, followed him. As the months passed, the court defeat began to take its toll. Kathleen had used nearly all her savings to cover the legal expenses. Every consultation with the lawyer, every requested document, and every new attempt to reverse the situation drained what little she had left. Before she knew it, all that remained in her bank account were a few coins. One quiet afternoon, Kathleen opened her latest bank statement and stared at it, feeling a lump in her throat. Everything she had saved throughout her life, all the effort to put a bit aside here and there, was gone. She slowly closed the envelope and pushed it to the corner of the table. "Not even enough for groceries," she murmured to herself, her voice weak. The days grew harder. Bills kept arriving, and Kathleen had to choose which ones to pay and which to leave for later. Even her blood pressure medication, which she had never skipped, became a problem. "I'll save by cutting the pills in half. It'll last longer," she thought, squeezing the nearly empty bottle in her hand. Help came from her children. Sheldon and Anna, worried about their mother, began sending money every month. Even though she knew they weren't obligated to, Kathleen felt humiliated by the need to rely on them. She had never wanted to be a burden on anyone. One evening, Sheldon visited her and found the fridge nearly empty. He looked at Kathleen, who sat slumped on the sofa, shoulders down and eyes lowered, and his heart sank. "Mum, why didn't you tell me you needed more money? You don't have to go through this alone," he said, picking up his car keys. "I'll go to the shop right now, and we'll sort this." Kathleen tried to hold his arm, shaking her head with a sad smile. "There's no need, son. I don't eat that much these days." "Stop it, Mum. You always took care of us. Now it's our turn. There's no shame in accepting help." Despite her son's words, Kathleen couldn't shake the feeling of failure. It was as if everything she had built throughout her life had slipped through her fingers. Every time she received money from her children, she felt a bitter mix of gratitude and sorrow. "I just wanted to fix everything without bothering you," she whispered. Sheldon knelt beside her, gently holding her hands. "You'll never be a bother, Mum. We're in this together always, and I won't let you go without, all right?" Kathleen smiled, but it was a tired, faint smile. She was grateful for her children's love, but deep down, the pain she felt wasn't just about money. It was the sense that injustice had won. One night, while watching television with her cat Luna, a news report stirred something inside Kathleen. It featured a woman who had exposed a major company by going undercover as an employee and uncovering internal documents that would never have been found otherwise. Kathleen was glued to the screen. "So that's how she managed to prove it," she murmured, intrigued. The idea seemed crazy but also fascinating. If that woman had uncovered the truth from the inside, why couldn't Kathleen do the same? She knew something wrong had happened at the casino. The problem was, from the outside, there was nothing more she could do. But if she could get inside, maybe she'd find the evidence she needed. She switched off the TV, sat in silence for a moment, and then looked at Luna, who was dozing beside her. "What if I tried, Luna?" she asked the cat, who lazily opened one eye before drifting back to sleep. Deep down, Kathleen knew it sounded ridiculous, but she had nothing left to lose. She decided she was going to infiltrate the casino. She had to find out how things worked from the inside. The idea gave her new energy, a flicker of light amidst the darkness she had carried for so long. The next morning, she called Anna. "Darling, I need your help with something different." "What are you up to now, Mum?" Anna asked suspiciously. "I need a disguise. I want to get into that casino and see what they're hiding." Anna was silent for a few seconds, then let out a nervous laugh. "Mum, are you serious?" "Yes, I am. I've tried everything and nothing's worked. I won't just sit here waiting for life to run out without fighting for what's mine. Will you help me?" Anna sighed on the other end of the line, knowing that once her mother set her mind on something, there was no changing it. "All right, Mum, I'll come up with something. But please be careful." "Don't worry, darling, I know what I'm doing, I think." Kathleen chuckled, trying to hide the growing anxiety. In the days that followed, Anna helped her put together a simple disguise. Different glasses, hair neatly tied, and plain, understated clothing. The next step was getting into the casino. After some research, they discovered the casino was hiring temporary administrative staff. Kathleen applied as if she were just another candidate and waited. To her surprise, a few days later, she got a call. "Mrs. Georgia Lewis," asked a voice on the other end of the line. It was the casino manager. "Are you available to start next week?" Kathleen gripped the phone tightly, her heart racing. She had used the fake name Anna suggested to avoid raising suspicion. "Yes, I am. You can count on me." When she hung up, she stared at the wall for a moment, processing what had just happened. The plan was in motion. She was going to get into the casino. "This is it, Luna. It's really happening." The cat looked at her lazily, unaware of what was going on, while Kathleen finally felt as though she was regaining control of her story. Early Monday morning, Kathleen put on her disguise, large glasses, her hair tied in a neat bun, and simple yet elegant clothes. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. "Who would have thought, Luna? Your mum's an executive now," she joked as the cat watched her sleepily. With a mix of nerves and excitement, she grabbed her bag and headed out. At the casino, the bright lights and the sounds of the machines made her heart race. Pretending to be confident, she walked up to the staff desk. "Georgia Lewis, here to start today," she said, with a polite smile. The receptionist checked the list and signaled for Kathleen to follow her to a room at the back. There, a friendly supervisor named Rosemary welcomed her. "Welcome, Georgia. I'll show you where you'll be working. It's a simple job in the finance department, helping us organize files and input data. It shouldn't take long." Kathleen nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "Perfect, I'll handle it." She followed Rosemary through the casino's hallways to a quiet area far from the noisy machines. It was an office filled with papers and computers. Kathleen took everything in, careful not to seem too curious. "This is where I'll find something," she thought. "Your desk is over there, Georgia," Rosemary said, pointing to a corner desk. "Start with those reports. If you need anything, just let me know." "Thank you, I've got it." Kathleen settled in and began working, but her real mission had already begun. As she organized the documents, her eyes scanned every detail. Her plan was to proceed slowly without drawing attention. If she could stay long enough, she'd have a chance to uncover something suspicious. During the first week, Kathleen kept her head down, doing exactly what was asked of her. She was careful and discreet and soon realized that her colleagues barely noticed her presence. That was good. The less attention she attracted, the freer she would be to investigate. While working, she overheard conversations that provided useful clues. Employees mentioned transfers to and from foreign accounts, just the kind of thing Kathleen had suspected. "I don't get why there's so much secrecy around these transfers," one colleague remarked one day. "Even we don't know where half the money's coming from." Kathleen kept a neutral expression, but every piece of information she heard was stored in her mind. At night, she jotted everything down in a hidden notebook. She spent hours thinking about how to find the concrete evidence she needed without being discovered. A single document proving the fraud, that's what she needed. She was close but still missing the final piece. In the meantime, she kept up her flawless act, appearing as just another ordinary employee. Outwardly, she was Georgia Lewis, a calm and efficient assistant. But inside, she was Kathleen, a determined woman who refused to be defeated so easily. On a quiet afternoon at the office, Kathleen was alone, organizing a stack of old reports. Her fingers ran over the pages as her eyes carefully scanned everything. She had been at it for weeks and still hadn't found anything concrete, but her intuition told her she was close. Then, as she flipped through a document, something different caught her attention: a bank transfer report. At the top of the page were large sums sent to an account in a country Kathleen recognized from the news. Cayman Islands. she murmured to herself, feeling her heart race. She knew it was one of those tax havens where companies often hide money. But what was a casino doing transferring millions there? She gripped the sheet more firmly, and that's when she noticed another important detail. The transfer had taken place the exact week the lottery prize was supposed to be paid out. So that's it, she whispered, her breath quickening. Without wasting time, Kathleen checked the other pages. There was no justification for the transfer, no clear reason in the report. It was buried among many other figures, as if someone had tried not to draw attention to it. But Kathleen knew it wasn't a coincidence. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She needed to copy the information and leave without raising suspicion. Pulling a notebook from her bag, she jotted everything down: the amount, the date, and the name of the foreign account. While writing, she glanced over her shoulder to make sure no one was nearby. "They took the prize and sent it abroad," she muttered, furious as she finished her notes. She slipped the notebook back into her bag and arranged the papers exactly as they had been, so no one would suspect anything. Her mind was racing. She had finally found the proof she needed, the missing piece. Now, with this information, she could prove the prize had been diverted. At that moment, Kathleen didn't feel like a fragile old woman or a victim. She felt more alive than ever, as if she had rediscovered the strength that injustice had nearly taken from her. "Now it's my turn," she said softly, a spark in her eyes. With the notebook safely in her bag, Kathleen finished her shift as if nothing had happened. But inside, the sense of relief and hope was almost impossible to contain. She was closer than ever to delivering justice. The next morning, Kathleen woke up early, her heart still racing from the discovery. She knew she had to proceed carefully. She couldn't just hand this information over to anyone. She needed someone who could make noise, someone brave enough to expose the truth. That's when she remembered Jack Morgan's, a journalist known for his reports on corruption and scandals. If anyone could help, it was him. With the notebook hidden in her bag, Kathleen picked up the phone and called the newspaper where Jack worked. "Hello, I'd like to speak to Jack Morgan's. It's urgent," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. After a few minutes of waiting, the journalist's voice came through the line. "Who's speaking?" "My name is Kathleen. I have information about a scandal involving a casino. They diverted the money from a lottery prize. I need you to hear me out." Jack was silent for a few moments, but then his voice returned, serious and intrigued. "I'm listening. Where can we meet?" "At a cafe near my house, 42 11th Street. I'll be there at 3 o'clock. "I'll be there, Mrs. Kathleen, and I promise to listen carefully." When the time came, Kathleen sat in a corner of the cafe, clutching her bag tightly. With every person who entered, her heart jumped, until she finally saw a man with a light beard and sharp eyes approaching. "Mrs. Kathleen, I'm Jack Morgan's." She gave a small smile and motioned for him to sit. "Thank you for coming. I have something very serious to show you." Kathleen opened her bag and took out the notebook with her notes, along with some copies of the documents she had obtained from the casino. Jack took the papers and began reading, his brow furrowing. Transfers to the Cayman Islands, at the same time as the prize. This is serious. He looked at Kathleen intently. "Are you sure about all this?" "I am. These papers come straight from the casino's finance department. I found them myself. They diverted the money that was rightfully mine and gave the prize to someone else." Jack flipped through the pages carefully, as if the pieces were starting to fall into place in his mind. "Mrs. Kathleen, this is huge. If this information is accurate, and it seems like it is, we're looking at a major fraud. I'll need a few days to verify everything and gather more evidence, but I promise I'll publish this story." Kathleen took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I just want justice, Jack. I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. And you'll have it. Trust me." In the following days, Jack did his job. He verified the documents, cross-checked information, and reached out to anonymous sources who confirmed the fraud. Within a week, the headline was on every website and newspaper. "Casino diverts lottery prize and funnels millions into tax havens." The news exploded like a bomb. TV channels, social media, and radio programs discussed the scandal non-stop. The casino denied everything, but the evidence was too strong to ignore. Directors began facing investigations, and a wave of public outrage descended on the company. At home, Kathleen watched the news with a mix of relief and emotion. After so much hardship, the truth was finally coming to light. Sheldon and Anna sat beside her, smiling proudly. "I told you, Mum. You did it," Sheldon said, squeezing her hand. With her eyes shining with emotion, Kathleen looked at her children and gave them a sincere smile, the first in a long time. Long? "We haven't won yet, but now the world knows what they did. That's a start." The following days were a whirlwind. The scandal stayed in the headlines, and the casino, once seemingly untouchable, began to crumble from within. The pressure became so intense that, within a week, the top directors resigned, trying to distance themselves from the scandal before things got worse. The casino's president has just resigned following revelations of fraud in the lottery prize, a reporter said on TV. The investigation found that millions of dollars were diverted to offshore accounts. Kathleen watched the news with a mix of relief and disbelief. Seeing that empire collapse was something she never imagined. Still, it was hard to believe it was all happening because of her ticket. "It's like a house of cards, Mum," Anna said, sitting beside her. "Once the first one falls, the rest follow quickly." In addition to the resignations, customers began abandoning the casino. No one wanted to be associated with a company involved in corruption. With the steady stream of gamblers drying up, the casino's profits plummeted. International investors started pulling out, and the casino's financial situation became critical. One day, Sheldon came home holding the latest newspaper. "Mum, you won't believe it. They're saying the casino might declare bankruptcy if they don't find new investors soon." Kathleen took the paper from his hands and read the headlines calmly. It was as if a part of her heart finally found peace. "So, it seems the world really does turn," she said with a faint smile. "When the truth comes out, no lie lasts." The casino's employees began to worry about their jobs. Many had families to support and didn't know what the future held. Kathleen listened to the news about their despair and felt a pang of guilt. Though she had fought for justice, the thought of innocent people paying the price for the powerful's mistakes troubled her. "I don't want these people to lose their jobs because of them," she murmured, deep in thought. Anna looked at her, concerned. "Mum, you can't blame yourself for this. They were the ones who did wrong, not you." Kathleen knew her daughter was right, but she still couldn't shake the feeling. In the days that followed, Kathleen couldn't sleep properly. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the news showing the casino employees worried, afraid of losing their jobs. They were ordinary people like her, trying to get by. Although she knew her fight for justice had been the right thing, seeing so many people suffer because of the casino's downfall weighed heavily on her heart. One night, while having tea in the kitchen with Sheldon, she opened up. "Son, I don't want these people to lose their jobs because of what happened. The directors are to blame, not them. Mum, this isn't your responsibility. They chose to cheat. You only did the right thing by exposing the truth," Sheldon said, trying to comfort her. Kathleen shook her head, lost in thought. "I know. But if this place goes under completely, it's the workers who'll pay the price. I can't just sit back and let that happen. I need to do something." Sheldon was surprised by her words. "And what are you thinking of doing?" "I'm not sure yet. But if there's a way to help the casino recover without letting injustice go unpunished, I'll find it." The next morning, Kathleen went to see Dr. Preston, the lawyer who had helped her with the case. He was taken aback when he heard what she had in mind. "You want to help the casino? After everything they did?" "I want to help the people who work there." "I'm not asking anything for the corrupt directors," Kathleen said firmly. "Is there any investor who could put money into the casino and save the jobs?" The lawyer stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Well, Mrs. Kathleen, it's complicated, but if you really want to try, I can introduce you to some business contacts. There's an Arab investment fund that sometimes steps in to rescue businesses. They might be interested." Kathleen gave a determined smile. "Then that's what I want. Let's talk to them." With the lawyer's help, Kathleen arranged a meeting with representatives from the investment fund. On the day of the meeting, she sat at the table with men in elegant suits, but she wasn't intimidated. She told her story and explained why saving the casino was important, not for the fraudulent directors, but for the hundreds of workers who depended on their jobs to live. The businessmen listened attentively. After a few minutes of conversation in Arabic among themselves, one of them looked at Kathleen and said, "You are courageous. We will consider your request. If we can reach a good agreement with the new board, we can invest." Kathleen smiled, feeling her heart lighten for the first time in weeks. "I only ask one thing. Make sure the employees continue working and are paid fairly. The rest is up to you." When she left the meeting, Kathleen knew she was doing the right thing. Maybe her fight had started over a lottery ticket, but now it was about more than that. It was about protecting people and doing what she could to prevent others from suffering because of the powerful's mistakes. "We can't change everything in the world, Luna," she said to her cat at home, "but I'll change what I can." In the following days, Kathleen found herself in a position she had never imagined. She was involved in important negotiations, talking with lawyers and business people, doing everything she could to ensure the casino wouldn't collapse. It was a new world for her, full of difficult words and complex contracts, but with Dr. Preston's help, she pressed on. "You've got impressive determination, Mrs. Kathleen," the lawyer said as he reviewed some documents. "Few people in your position would care about the fate of the casino after all that's happened." Kathleen gave a small smile. "I don't want the corrupt directors to get away with it. But I also don't want innocent people losing their jobs because of their mistakes. If I can help, I will." Once the initial contact was made, Kathleen and the Arab Investment Fund began exchanging proposals. They demanded guarantees that the new board would be honest and that the directors involved in the fraud would have no further power. Kathleen insisted that every detail be followed. "It's not enough to save the casino. I want it to be a decent place for the people working there," she said during one of the video conferences. The fund's representatives listened carefully and agreed to the terms. "We are willing to invest. But some debts will need to be renegotiated and the management will have to be restructured." "Who will be in charge now?" one of the investors asked. Kathleen took a deep breath. "The new board will be made up of people with no ties to the former management. The company needs honest people to move forward." Dr. Preston smiled, pleased with her firm stance. "I'll prepare the final contracts. With this investment, the casino will have a chance to recover." A few days later, the deal was sealed. The Arab Fund committed to injecting enough money to pay off the casino's debts and keep it running. In return, they demanded strict rules of transparency and governance from the new board. When everything was made official, Kathleen felt a deep sense of relief. She knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but she had secured what she wanted. The casino wouldn't go bankrupt and the employees could keep their jobs. Sheldon and Anna, always by her side, couldn't hide their pride. "You did something incredible, Mum," Sheldon said, hugging her. "Who would have thought you'd end up saving the casino?" Kathleen laughed, relieved, as she ran a hand through her white hair. "I just did what I thought was right, my son. Now I hope these people can move forward without fear of tomorrow." After months of struggle, the feeling of a mission accomplished filled her heart. Months later, the casino was unrecognizable. With the Arab Fund's investment and new management in place, the business had bounced back. Customers returned, and the employees who had once feared for their future now worked with ease. The scandal was still talked about, but the fact that the casino had survived and changed course earned the community's respect. One day, Kathleen was at home when she received an unexpected phone call. "Mrs. Kathleen, this is Sophia from the casino's management. We'd like to invite you to a special celebration next Friday." "Me?" Kathleen asked, surprised. "Why would I be invited?" "Because the casino still exists thanks to you. We want to thank you and honor you. We hope you can come." Kathleen was speechless for a moment, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Well, I suppose I'll come." On Friday, Sheldon and Anna insisted on going with her. "You deserve this recognition, Mum," Anna said, helping Kathleen pick an outfit for the evening. "It's only right that we're there with you." When they arrived at the casino, The place was beautifully decorated for the occasion. Lights were everywhere, soft music played, and there was a joyful atmosphere. As soon as Kathleen walked in, the new management welcomed her with warm smiles. "Mrs. Kathleen, we wouldn't be here today without your courage and determination. It's an honor to have you with us tonight," one of the board members said. "I just did what needed to be done," Kathleen replied humbly, though her heart was warmed. During the celebration, employees approached her, thanking her for helping save their jobs. "Thank you for not leaving us in the lurch, Mrs. Kathleen," one of the security guards said. "You're a real fighter," one of the bartenders added. Kathleen, who had never sought recognition, was deeply touched by every word. Her heart grew lighter with each hug and smile she received. At one point, she was invited to the stage. All the guests stood and applauded as she walked up, a little shy but emotional. The director took the microphone and addressed the crowd. "Today we celebrate a new chapter for the casino, but we also honor a very special person. Mrs. Kathleen has shown us that justice and compassion go hand in hand. Thanks to her, we are here, stronger and better." The applause grew louder, and Kathleen's eyes filled with tears. When the director handed her a bouquet of flowers and a plaque of appreciation, she took a deep breath and grabbed the microphone. "I'm not one for big speeches, but I want to thank you all. I just did what I thought was right, and if this story has taught us anything, it's that it's never too late to fight for what's fair." As the party continued, Kathleen watched the lights and the people laughing and toasting. She felt at peace, but something still weighed on her heart. Despite all the celebration and gratitude, a part of her knew she wasn't fully at ease. The prize she had been denied remained an open wound. And there, surrounded by everyone, she realized that this was the right moment to say what needed to be said. She stood up slowly and walked back to the stage. A few people noticed and stopped talking, curious. The casino's general manager, who was still holding the microphone, saw her approach and politely handed it back to her. Kathleen took a deep breath, looked at the audience and spoke firmly but calmly. "I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart, but there's something I need to say, here and now." The room fell silent. Everyone was waiting, attentive to what would come next. "I fought for justice and helped this place avoid collapse. I'm glad the employees could keep their jobs. But the truth is there is still a debt owed to me, and that debt is the prize I was denied," she declared, her voice steady and clear. The general manager and the other board members exchanged surprised glances, but Kathleen didn't waver. "I know there was fraud. I know my ticket was the winning one, and you know it too. I spent months fighting in court for what is rightfully mine. And today, in front of everyone here, I am demanding what belongs to me. I want the prize that was stolen from me." The crowd remained silent, focused. Many already knew her story and the injustice she had endured. Seeing that white-haired lady standing tall in the middle of the party, demanding what was hers, filled the room with unexpected energy. Slowly, people began to clap, first one or two, then several. The general manager walked towards Kathleen, wearing a nervous but respectful smile. "Mrs. Kathleen, I understand what you're saying, and we recognize everything you've done for this place. We want to resolve this in the best way possible." He gestured to one of the lawyers present at the party, and after a brief conversation between them, he returned to the microphone. "To end this matter fairly, we would like to offer financial compensation. Something that not only restores justice, but also shows our respect for you." Kathleen folded her arms, waiting. "We are prepared to pay $8.5 million, the manager announced. The room erupted in applause and murmurs of approval. Anna and Sheldon, watching from afar, embraced emotionally. Kathleen stood silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of the moment. At last, what had been taken from her was being returned, with interest. She took the microphone once more and spoke calmly. $8.5 million sounds fair. It's not just about the money, it's about knowing that the truth prevailed in the end." The crowd applauded again, and Kathleen smiled. After so much hardship, the battle was finally over. The day after the party, Kathleen received a formal call from the casino's new board. The lawyer's voice on the other end was polite and direct. "Mrs. Kathleen, we'd like to arrange a meeting to formalize the agreement. We want to ensure everything is done correctly and fairly. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon?" "Of course I'll be there," Kathleen replied calmly, though inside she felt a mix of relief and nerves. When she arrived at the casino's office on the agreed day, Kathleen was received with respect. Present were the general manager, 2 lawyers, and Dr. Preston, who had insisted on accompanying her to ensure everything went as planned. She sat at the table, firm, staring directly at the men before her. "As we said at the celebration, we are ready to close this chapter and offer fair compensation for what happened," the manager began. "You will receive $8.5 million. We want to ensure complete transparency and that you feel respected." Kathleen remained silent for a moment, looking over the documents placed before her. Dr. Preston carefully reviewed every line, making sure nothing was hidden in the contract. "Everything is in order, Mrs. Kathleen." "It's a fair agreement," he said with a small smile. The manager extended his hand, demonstrating cordiality. "Once you sign, the amount will be transferred within 48 hours. Kathleen picked up the pen, but before signing, she looked at everyone at the table and spoke serenely. "I want you to know this isn't just about money. This agreement is about justice. I fought because I couldn't let this happen to me, and I hope it won't happen to anyone else." The men at the table listened respectfully, understanding the depth of her words. "You are absolutely right," the manager said, "and we guarantee this will never happen here again." With a sigh of relief, Kathleen signed the contract. The paper carried more than just numbers. It marked the end of a battle that had consumed months of her life. When she finished, she placed the pen on the table and looked at Dr. Preston. "There, it's done." He smiled and shook her hand. "It's done, Mrs. Kathleen, and you've won." Tight over the next 2 days, Kathleen felt anxious, checking her bank account every few hours. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, the confirmation finally arrived. The amount was there, every cent of the promised $8.5 million. Kathleen let out a long sigh as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Sheldon and Anna were beside her when she saw the message from the bank. "Mum," Sheldon said, hugging her tightly, "you did it." "Yes, my son, I did it. And you know what? It was worth it." Kathleen closed her phone and looked at her children, feeling a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. At last, justice had been served. A few weeks after receiving the money, Kathleen found herself reflecting on everything she had been through. The victory had brought relief, but she knew many people wouldn't be as lucky as she was. How many faced similar injustices without the means to fight? How many were deceived every day, left without a voice? While drinking coffee in the kitchen, she looked at Sheldon and Anna, who were discussing what they would do with the money. "Mum, you'll finally be able to live peacefully now. You can buy a house, travel," Anna said with a smile. Kathleen gave a small smile, but another idea was forming in her mind. "Kids, I've been thinking. I want to use part of this money for something bigger. I want to create a foundation to help people who've gone through what I did. People who were deceived and have no way to fight on their own." Anna blinked in surprise. "A foundation, Mum? Do you really want to do that?" "Yes, I do. There's no point winning this fight and staying quiet. There are so many people out there who need support, and I can provide that for them." Sheldon looked at his mother with pride. "And what will you call this foundation?" Kathleen thought for a moment, and then a soft smile appeared on her face. "Hope Foundation, because when everything seems lost, we need hope to keep fighting." With the help of lawyers and family friends, Kathleen began setting up the foundation. The paperwork was complicated, but she didn't mind. She was determined to make it work. Within a few months, the Hope Foundation was officially launched. The goal was clear: to offer legal and emotional support to victims of fraud and injustice. Volunteer lawyers joined the project, ready to help people who couldn't afford legal defense. Additionally, the foundation organized talks and educational campaigns to raise awareness about scams and frauds. "No one will go through what I did without having support," Kathleen said firmly, as she organized the first cases the foundation would handle. Sheldon and Anna were by her side every step of the way, helping structure the project and bring in partners. Gradually, the foundation began gaining recognition, and stories of people achieving justice with its help started to emerge. One day, a woman who had recovered her money thanks to the foundation came to visit Kathleen. She held Kathleen's hands, her eyes filled with gratitude. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it. Thank you so much." Kathleen gently squeezed the woman's hands and smiled warmly. "You deserve justice, and now you have it. That's what matters." The Hope Foundation grew stronger each day, and Kathleen knew that this was her greatest victory, turning her pain into something that could change lives. Years went by, and Kathleen lived the rest of her life in peace, knowing she had done the right thing. The Hope Foundation grew beyond anything she had imagined. It was no longer just a small project, but a respected organization helping thousands of people. Stories of families who found justice through the foundation spread, and Kathleen's name became a symbol of courage and perseverance. She lived to an old age, always surrounded by her children and grandchildren. In her later years, she spent afternoons on the porch, gazing at the sky with Luna, now an old and lazy cat, by her side. Despite her age, Kathleen never stopped following the foundation's work. She was proud of every victory achieved by those who had learned from her struggle. One quiet morning, Kathleen passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her children and grandchildren gathered to say their goodbyes, and the whole town seemed to feel her absence. News of her passing spread quickly, and people from everywhere sent messages of affection and gratitude. "Your grandmother was a hero," Sheldon told the grandchildren as he held a photo of her smiling. "She taught us never to accept injustice, no matter how hard it is to fight." The funeral was simple, just as Kathleen had wanted, but on the day of the burial, hundreds of people showed up to pay their respects. Lawyers, journalists, casino workers, and many others who had benefited from the foundation's work were there, holding flowers and signs with messages of gratitude. A woman who had been helped by the foundation spoke on behalf of everyone. "Mrs. Kathleen wasn't just a winner, she was an inspiration to me and to many others. Because of her, we learned to never give up, and to believe that justice is always worth fighting for." Over the years, the Hope Foundation continued to grow. Her children and grandchildren took over the leadership, ensuring that Kathleen's mission would never be forgotten. With every new case resolved, her memory lived on. In schools, her name began to be mentioned in lessons on citizenship and justice. Teachers shared her story to inspire children to always stand up for what is right, even when everything seems to be against them. "Who was Mrs. Kathleen?" a child asked during a class discussion. "She was a lady who never gave up on what was fair," the teacher replied with a smile. "And because of that, we live in a slightly better world today." In time, the Hope Foundation became an unbreakable legacy. Whenever someone asked how it all started, people would remember the story of an elderly woman who, against all odds, took on a casino and won, not just for the money, but for justice. And so Kathleen remained present. In every person who received help, in every case won, and in every new generation inspired by her story. She may have left, but her example stayed. A reminder that no matter how hard it seems, it is always worth fighting for what is right. Kathleen's story shows us that it's never too late to fight for what's right. Even when everything seems lost, even when the powerful appear to win, courage and determination can turn the impossible into reality. Kathleen didn't fight just for money, but for justice. And she proved that with perseverance, anyone can make a difference. Now I ask you, what would you do if you were in Kathleen's place? Would you have the courage to see it through to the end, even without any guarantees of victory? Or if you were one of her children, how would you support your mother in this battle? Leave your opinion in the comments. I'd love to know how you'd handle this situation. Oh, and don't forget, turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any new stories like this. There's a lot of exciting content coming, and I want you with me every step of the way. Now click on the video on the screen and continue this journey. I'm sure it's going to change your life.